Hello and welcome to another standard video. Today we're checking out this mono blue wizards deck, which gets to run 4 copies of Mana Sculpt, and the comparisons with mana drain are easy to make. This one is a little pricier at 3 mana, and it does require a wizard in play, but then it's a counter spell that gives us an amount of colorless mana at the beginning of our next main phase, equal to the amount of mana spent to cast the spell that we're about to counter. So this can give us a huge mana boost, and is especially good at setting up some of our expensive colorless spells, cards like the Fear-Dog Core, which also happens to be a changeling, which is also a wizard, to set up Mana Sculpt in the first place. So with the core in play, we now get to make mana with our Mana Sculpt, and we can maybe now play the core with the colorless mana on the following turn as well, or maybe activate it to attack for 4. And then we've got the Thundertrap Trainer as a cheap wizard that can also enable Mana Sculpt. It can also find Mana Sculpt among the top 4 when it enters the battlefield, and it also has a nice mana sync with Offspring. So if we make a bunch of mana with the Mana Sculpt, we can maybe play it with Offspring to make 2 trainers that can both find additional non-creature spells. And then as a nice curve topper, we've got 3 copies of the Emeritus of Ideation, a 5 mana 5/5 flyer with a ward 2, enters prepared, and the prepared spell is none other than Ancestral Recall, so 1 mana to draw 3 cards at instant speed. So this deck has Ancestral Recall and mana drain pretty much, so that's what we're really trying to build around. And then the Emeritus can maybe get the Ancestral Recall once again if it attacks and exiles 8 cards from our graveyard, so that can also happen over the course of a longer game. And then to make sure we have a few more wizards, I'm also running the full set of Tishana's Tidebinder, which can counter all sorts of activated and triggered abilities and shut down artifacts, creatures, and planeswalkers that are countered this way. And then we also have a one-off Harbinger of the Tides as another bounce effect in creature form, can bounce tapped creatures, pretty good at bouncing Earthbended lands from Badger Molcub. Speaking of Badger Molcub, we can also counter it with a Spell Snare even when we're on the draw, so playing the full playset here. We also have Bounce Off as a versatile bounce spell, can also bounce my own creatures with it, can be nice at maybe resetting a Thundertrap Trainer in the late game to replay it with Offspring once again, or maybe bounce our Emeritus after we've already drawn 3 cards with it. And then we've got a bit more instant speed card draw with a full set of Consult the Star Charts. Not playing any copies of Stock Up in this deck, which is another powerful card draw effect, because we mostly want to be operating at instant speed, so we can keep up our mana for our various counter spells like Mana Sculpt and Long River's Pull. So then it's easier to play with Consult when we can maybe cast it end of turn if we don't need to counter anything. And Long River's Pull is a great answer to opposing creatures, but we can always gift the opponent a card to counter any spell whatsoever. And then the mana base has plenty of basic islands. Agnakella gives us a mana sink to maybe loot away unwanted cards. Maybe this is a matchup where Spell Snare is not particularly effective, then we can get rid of it. Cavern of Souls to make our wizards uncounterable, and Demolition Fields to deal with opposing utility lands like maybe a Cavern of Souls making the opponent's spells uncounterable, and can also maybe blow up creature lands that could be annoying otherwise. So yeah, that's our deck. Now let's jump into some games and see how the deck does. Okay, we're on the play with a functional hand, maybe lacking some cheaper interaction, but I'll give it a shot. So facing blue-white, could just resolve the trainer now. Maybe find like a Fear-Dog Core or a counterspell. Alright. I'll take the core since we need more mana. Opponent with a brick, so it's the artifact deck. So counter spells are at a premium. Tidebinder can be effective in some situations. Doesn't straight up counter the 3 mana synthesizer, but can shut it down by countering the Scry 2 trigger. So I do think we want to keep that available. Star Cage is fine. Don't feel the need to fight over it. Mana Sculpt is great. So I think we pass, planning to kick Consult if they don't make me stop anything. A relic is fine. And then I can maybe play the core, which enables mana sculpt as well. So definitely want the lanes, and then we're not countering creatures with a pull, so our opponent would get to draw off of it. But I think it's still better than a second Emeritus right now. Well, that's kind of a close call. Because the first Emeritus makes more mana, they probably answer it, and then having a second could be great. But maybe countering something like a United Battlefront is still worth it. So core, pass with Tidebinder and Mana Sculpt. Perilous Snare. Yeah, I think we sculpt it. Gives me 3 mana next turn. So I can now play Emeritus. And probably fine to draw 3. Well, I guess we could also keep up Tidebinder and pull. Just in case. Yeah, there's a Battlefront, so that's what I want to counter if possible. So with 2 mana left, I'm not too worried. Can maybe draw into another Mana Sculpt. A Long River pull it is. And gifting a card. Yeah, Mana Sculpt into Trainer with Offspring would have been sweet. And there it is. So I can hit for 5. Possible they have the Saw Blades, but they cannot pay the ward. And then I think we just pass. Don't have a great plan if they don't do anything, but I assume they will cast something here that we can probably counter with a Tidebinder, keep up the pressure. Yeah, repurposing Bay. So I can counter after they sacrifice. So card draw trigger resolves. And this one does not. And now the repurposing Bay is shut down as well. They can have Cryogen Relic, maybe should have spell snared it. But I'll save this for Saw Blades, which is more relevant. Alright, so Trainer with Offspring still feels a little sketchy. Attacking with a core is also tying up 5 mana. So I think this is just attack for 8 and then keep up interaction. Maybe next turn close it out. It's kind of on the opponent to deal with what I have. So Perilous Snare. I could Tidebinder. Or I can just Mana Sculpt it. We have lethal, I guess, unless they use the Relic to lock something down. So maybe I prefer another Tidebinder here. I don't expect any sweepers. Plus I could just counter those as well. And yeah, opponent scoops it up, so Tidebinder, definitely a nice one in this matchup. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw with a functional start. Got our Spell Snare for a 2-drop, bounce off. Just gotta hit our land drops early on. Facing a Prowess deck, could also be something more controlling. Abandon attachments. Yeah, let's Spell Snare. So it might be the Lesson deck splashing for Jeskai Revelation. Play the core. Possible they 3-steps it, that's fine. Or maybe the Quench. Confounding Riddle. Fair enough. So not to counter, but just to look at the top 4. Filling the graveyard some more for their lesson package. Can still maybe spell snare the wisdom to draw 3 at some point. Another abandoned attachment. Think we let that one slide. Just so I can counter the draw 3s. And while they're maybe thinking removal's not useful, we actually have some creatures that are worth protecting. So now we can play Consult with Kicker end of turn. Still have Spell Snare up. Demolition Field on Great Hall, certainly a play we want to make at some point. Opponent with another attachment, sure. Discarding another Firebending Lesson. And a Grand to discount their spells. So I'll Consult now before they get to discount in case they have a counterspell here. Finding Mana Sculpts. Harbinger is reasonable just because it blocks a Grand. But yeah, we're probably not going to bounce it anytime soon. So I might prefer the land. And yeah, that's the one we want to fight over. Okay. It would be nice to get a blocker in play for Grand so they don't just get to loot for free. But it's possible they still have a counterspell up, although they did not fight over the Accumulate Wisdom. But yeah, maybe they're scared of something bigger. I think I still try the Emeritus. I'll be able to draw 3, have a blocker for Grand. And if they Jeskai Revelation, thanks to the discount, they cannot pay the ward, so we'll see about this. That works. Possible they have a combustion technique for the Emeritus. Nope, this is the Jeskai Revelation. So they are bouncing the core, dealing 4 to my face. So I can just draw 3 here. But yeah, Revelation would be awesome to Mana Sculpt, of course. Alright, so can hit my land drop. And then I've got 3 cards in graveyard. I think we could consider just passing with double Mana Sculpt. Or I can deploy a Fear-Dog Core. And then I'll still have a 1 Mana Sculpt and a Bounce Off. Maybe enough. And I'll play defense. Alright, there's a combustion technique. Let them pay the ward. And then I think I just Mana Sculpt the technique. If they fight over this, I can still bounce off the Emeritus. That worked. And a stock up. That will resolve. The longer I wait on Demolition Field, the less likely they have a basic left in the deck. So Emeritus holding off the attacks. I guess I only get 1 mana since the opponent cast their spell with a discount from Grand. Still don't want to let that mana go to waste. Kick a Consult. Finding Mana Sculpt Emeritus, I imagine. Still gonna play defense, because the damage from those monk tokens can add up. So we can Mana Sculpt and a Long River's Pull. Combustion technique again. Yeah, maybe I just long reverse pull on that one, since we're not really getting the benefit from Mana Sculpt. Monk tokens are attacking. I'll block. And they also had a firebending lesson. Okay, so opponent paid the ward. Prowess happens. I think the plan now is just bounce the monk token for 1 mana. Should have maybe considered Demolition Field and then bounce off. But can wait for them to spend the mana animating the Great Hall before blowing it up. Alright, so now I could consider attacking with the Emeritus, since I can play another one. Although I would feel better about playing Emeritus with the extra mana from Mana Sculpt. It doesn't seem like I'm going to counter many triggers with the Tidebinder, so can maybe ambush Gran with it. Tablet of Discovery. I could counter the trigger with Tidebinder, that may be worth it actually. So they don't get to mill, and we also shut down the tablet for as long as we control Tidebinder. They can tap in a response, of course. And Improvisation Capstone is definitely not resolving. That would give me 6 mana next turn. I'll take 3 from the monk, keep my Tidebinder. Take my turn. So this is a great spot for another Emeritus. Could also animate the core to attack. Let's maybe recall first. Okay, found another counterspell. Trainer with Offspring, also looking pretty good now. Don't think we need Demolition Fields. Just try and find more interaction. And I guess we already have a pull. Take a consult. And that's a swing and a miss. Okay, so can hit for 8 here. And then, yeah, may as well do this. So I can recall again, maybe hit a land drop, and yeah, opponent scoops it up. So Mono Blue Wizards beating the Jeskai Lessons. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play. We've got a functional hand. Spell Snare to counter their 2-drop. Trainer can find more interaction. And Tidebinder is quite versatile. Opponent black-white. I'll wait on the trainer. Keep up Spell Snare. Possible I'll wait to play it with Offspring. Opponent Esper Colors. Yeah, we don't seem to be in a hurry. So is this Esper Control? Maybe a mill deck. Can start looting with Agnakella. Sure. Possible they resolve a kicked consult that I could have spell snared, but I do want to improve my hand as well. And yeah, there's a consult. Spell snare it. Might see them cast a consult now. But then we can maybe resolve a trainer with offspring. I'll still keep the long reverse pull, even though it's probably not countering many creatures. Now we've got our own consults. Alright, let's respond, and then maybe find another spell snare. Which I did, and Emeritus. This is a matchup where I would want to draw my Cavern of Souls to make Emeritus uncounterable. Possible they're more of a tap-out control deck with lots of removal, but not necessarily a ton of counter spells. And yeah, since we drew another Emeritus, it's probably time to start casting some threats. Maybe start with a trainer with offspring. Could also play it without offspring, to be fair. Keep up a long reverse pull. But I think we're okay to tap out for it, just trade for a counter spell. If not, maybe find some more relevant interaction, like Mana Sculpt. Opponent just has some removal here, that's fine. Take the core. And a Mana Sculpt, okay. If they are on a mill deck, they could maybe mill half of my library right now. But no, we get to untap. So now we'll just go for core. And then keep up our counter spells. And then next turn I can maybe play the Emeritus with counterspell backup. Opponent makes a treasure instead. Don't feel the need to counter that. Mistrise Village is scary, since that can make their spell uncounterable. So, and loot with Agnakella. And bounce off can bounce my own creature. So it can maybe be useful. Alright, I'll try the Emeritus. Maybe after attacking. Still gonna immediately draw in the hopes of hitting a land drop. Even though I'll probably have to discard to hand size as well. Opponent's gonna shoot the Sheriff, can ignore the ward. Could bounce the Emeritus, but we have another one, so don't feel too compelled. And our opponent will draw. And they're gonna stamp the 1/1 as well. Fair enough. Found plenty of lanes. Can discard one more. Opponent tries stock up. Yeah, somewhat tempted to just counter that one, because they're not using the Mistrise Village, so it's maybe one of my few opportunities. They're down to 2 cards in hand. We did have the Firdo Core in play actually, so we do still get 3 mana out of it, which is pretty useful when playing the Emeritus. And draw 3. And then anything I want to main phase. Yeah, I'll play the Harbinger so I don't have to discard it. A sweeper seems somewhat likely, but then I'll just bounce off the Emeritus. They're gonna stab the Harbinger. Can also consider attacking with the core at some point, if we think the coast is clear. Actually don't hate using Tidebinder here for added pressure, get a little bit of value out of it. Still have a long reverse pull available. And I do want to try and end the game while we're ahead. So we can go ahead and attack. Just do it for 8. And we can actually exile enough cards in order to draw 3 again. Exile my own creatures in case the opponent has a Kivero. I don't want him exiling my Emeritus somehow. Could also think about the implications of a cover-up, exiling a certain card out of my deck. Another reason to exile the Emeritus. So this an attack for 8. Not opposed to using a Tidebinder on Fountain Port. Damage happens. And then pass a turn. Can still draw 3 at instant speed. But didn't want to discard to hand size again. So because of Mistrise Village, I could still be in a bit of trouble. Although I suppose I could also bounce the Tidebinder and counter the Mistrise trigger. So there were a few interesting options available, but I'll take it. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play with functional hand. We'll need to find land number 3, but we've got a lot of early interaction, especially for 2-drops. Missing a bit of card draw. So we'll see. Turn 1 planes. Is this the mono-white aura deck? It looks like it. Happy to counter the Weaver. Keep this to counter an actual creature spell, so we don't need to gift a card. So, yeah, not opposed to playing the core. Still have Spell Snare up. And Aerialist. I think I do still counter. It's a shame that I couldn't counter it with a long reverse pull. But yeah, maybe we'll just counter their creature once again. I'll wait on the Emeritus until we can draw a card with it. Yeah, counter the vendor. Could also stop the trigger with the Tidebinder and then shut it down. Now with the lands, play the Emeritus. And we can still draw 3. So our opponent finally gets to resolve a creature, if they have any left. But yeah, they might just have a bunch of enchantments in hand now. And we drew more counter spells, including a Mana Sculpt ×2. Okay, so hit you for 5, and then could just keep up double Mana Sculpt to be absolutely safe. And then I can use a colorless mana to maybe play a core. And our opponent scoops it up, I'll take it. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play. We've got what looks like a keeper. Trainer for card advantage, plenty of interaction. And a Might from our opponent, so this is kind of a pump spell type of deck. Still gonna keep up Spell Snare for now. Another Might, yeah. Can maybe counter the trigger with a Tidebinder to shut it down. Another one, okay. Gonna let that one resolve. It's the pump spells I'm more worried about now. So I think we let this trigger resolve. And then Tidebinder. the other one. They could still cast a pump spell, but we'll see. Blossoming Defense, that's fine. I mean, the trigger is still countered, and this one's now shut down. So I'll take 5 to keep my wizard. And then pass with Spell Snare, Mana Sculpt. And hope to leverage this. That one we Spell Snare. Because the pump spells are probably 1-drops that I cannot Spell Snare. Mites all pumping each other. If they stack those carefully, they can get more mileage out of them. But yeah, one of the mites is shut down by the Tidebinder, which they're maybe now just realizing. So let those resolve. So yeah, can just block this for free. And I'm just gonna keep Consult in hand. Maybe play Trainer now without Offspring. And then Consult is a mana sink for Mana Sculpt. Since having an extra blocker seems useful. But could also do it the other way around and hold the Trainer in hand for a bit longer. I'll still keep up my counterspell. Alright, Fire-Brained Scheme. Pumping both creatures. Yeah, maybe that's worth fighting over. So this would go up to 2 power. And giving this another 2, both having first strike. Would be kind of tricky to block. So I'll get 1 mana out of my Mana Sculpt. But we should be stopping an attack. Draw Spell Snare. So I can either play Kicked Consult or play the core and then still keep up Consult. Seems good enough. So we could also turn this into a 4/4 to block with. A Wild Ride happens. Big attack. So then just trade here, take 5. If they have a Sellsword to fling, I would die. Maybe should have played Kick Consult before blockers in case I find the bounce spell. Could also just block here. And then this mite will be back online next turn. But maybe that's okay. Yeah, if I'm doing this, I should swap it. In case I can increase the toughness somehow. And then still gonna play Kicked Consult. Did find the bounce spell and the Emeritus. So now I think I still let damage happen. I get to take my turn, play Emeritus, pass a turn. And our opponent scoops it up. Yeah, we could just bounce in response to any additional pump spells. Awesome, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the play. We've got double counterspell. Core plays well with Mana Sculpt. Just missing the card draw, perhaps. And since we're on the play, we can pull on turn 2. Counter an opposing 2-drop like a Banjo Mole if that shows up. On the draw, we need Spell Snare. So we'll see what our opponent is up to. Blue-red. So it could be control, could be prowess. Spire Bluff, maybe more of a prowess card. Yeah, I think we can tap out for the core here. Opponent maybe more of a lesson deck with abandoned attachments, alright. Well, we've been here before. We'll see if they're on the Jeskai build or just blue-red. With flow states. It is the Jeskai build once again. Yeah, it is a popular deck these days. So, can play core, still have Sculpt up. And Agnakella can start looting. Opponent with an Accumulate Wisdom. Not gonna counter that one. Unless it's a draw 3, then we can Spell Snare. Tidecaller, I see. They want to mill themselves, maybe? Yeah, let's counter that one. Milling me could also be a concern, since we're not closing out the game quickly. Still want to hang on to Cavern of Souls. So now we can make an uncounterable wizard. We'll be tapped out of Mana Sculpt, but that seems fine. The main spell I want to counter is Jeskai Revelation, which they cannot cast yet. But I'm just using some removal. Alright, so trading for a couple firebending lessons. And Consult was excellent. Can still Spell Snare, Accumulate Wisdom. And they can have the attachments. Discarding Combustion Technique. I see the Dawning Archaic. Well, they know about a Long Reverse Pull, so maybe they've got another one in hand. They do. Alright, that could be a problem. May want to dig for a bounce spell. Otherwise, our opponent gets to accumulate wisdom when they attack. Alright, so did not find a bounce. Unless Harbinger next turn. And then I'll take the Mana Sculpt, I guess. Can just Spell Snare the Accumulate Wisdom, next turn bounce the Archaic, and then counter it on the way down. At least that's the plan. So no need to play this at instant speed. I'll just take 7. So definitely a different build from the previous lesson deck we faced. Opponent did have the Revelation, can still Mana Sculpt it. We've got the core as a wizard, so we'll get a bunch of mana. Alright, so where do we go from here? Still gotta be Harbinger, bounce the Archaic. Maybe loot with Agnakella. Just making sure we have enough blue mana in circulation. Consult is great. Alright, so if I play Harbinger, can start there. Bounce the Archaic. Then I won't be able to consult with Kicker right now. Unless I find a land. Or I can just Demolition Fields. And then I'll have another blue. Yeah, I guess we'll start here. So if I were to consult now, yeah, I guess we still wouldn't have Mana Sculpt up in the opponent's turn, so I'm just gonna call it quits. Counter your Archaic, giving me 7 mana next turn. Or never mind, it's only 2, since it's the mana spent and not the mana value. Still good for a kicked consult here. Finding double Emeritus. Or we can go Emeritus, 1 consult. Double Emeritus seems better. So another Revelation could be a concern. Opponent with an Abandoned Attachments. Yeah, you know what, let's recall and then probably Spell Snare it. They might just have a land in hand. Even though I would prefer to keep this for Accumulate Wisdom. Alright, so can attack and then we get to Ancestral Recall again with the Emeritus. Just checking that I don't have lethal here if I animate double core. Would be 7 plus 8, 15, so 1 short. So we'll exile a bunch of cards. Get to Ancestral again. And take it from there. A more Mana Sculpt, another Emeritus. Yeah, I guess this is fine. Can always bounce my Emeritus in response to a sweeper. Accumulate Wisdom. Yeah, I think we counter it, and then their last card needs to be amazing. And yeah, our opponent is out of answers and scoops it up. Awesome. So yeah, we got to see this mono blue Wizards deck in action. The Emeritus did a ton of work. Mana Sculpt also gave us a lot of mana in return. So that combination seems quite powerful, since the Mana Sculpt can help set up the Emeritus more reliably and still keep up mana for additional interaction. And we often made mana thanks to the Fear-Dock core being a wizard that the opponent maybe doesn't suspect. So yeah, that package seems to be the centerpiece of the deck, the core, Mana Sculpt, and Emeritus. And then the Otter with Offspring is another great mana sink for your Mana Sculpts while being a wizard, so it all ties it together very nicely. So yeah, overall, pretty happy with where the deck ended up. Of course, it does have some weaknesses against uncounterable spells, or incredibly fast decks with a lot of cheap spells can also go underneath our counter spells, so kind of have to pick the deck based on the meta. If you suspect slower decks with lots of expensive spells, then this is maybe going to be better positioned than in a meta with a lot of low-to-the-ground aggro decks. But yeah, that's going to do it for today's gameplay. Want to thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed, and as always, have a nice day.